dirty moderates, the criminal spree, the illegalities, the assault on the rule of law continue unabated when it comes to Donald John Trump. We have new charges, which dropped yesterday. As of this taping, this is Friday, and yesterday, Trump faced new criminal charges, although not in the case that many were expecting them to be. There's been a lot of talk about Jack Smith getting ready to indict Trump for January 6th and the insurrection, et cetera, et cetera. That very well may happen. But rather than an indictment related to his attempt to overturn the 2020 election and the big lie, there were additional charges released yesterday by Jack Smith relating to his retention, his being Trump's retention of classified documents. So we're here again in the Mar-a-Lago case, which of course is a very serious case, made all the more serious by the latest superseding indictment. All right, now this superseding indictment adds a third defendant alongside Trump and Walt Nauta. You remember Trump's longtime aide, post-presidency, Walt Nauta, N-A-U-T-A, had been indicted the first time. There is a new defendant here named Carlos De Oliveira. He is accused of engaging to delete the security footage at Mar-a-Lago after the government issued its subpoena for it on behalf of what Carlos is quoted as the boss. All right? So this new fella, Carlos De Oliveira, he's accused of engaging in a plot to delete security footage after the subpoena that could incriminate Trump on behalf of Trump. Now, it breaks new ground also by saying that Trump has been charged not just with failing to return the documents and obstruction of justice, but also for, quote, and you heard this when the original indictment dropped, a presentation, quote unquote, of information that he showed documents to people who were not authorized to see them. Okay? All right, a few takeaways. Number one, it's been very clear that this case wasn't just about Trump harboring classified documents when he shouldn't. It was about failing to return them when he was required to and obstructing efforts to retrieve them. You know, people get lost in this story. It's not just, Trump, had classified documents. He did, and he shouldn't have, but he was asked to return them. He only returned some of them and didn't return the rest of them. And he was legally required to. And then the charges say he obstructed efforts to retrieve them. The superseding indictment talks about how much this trial is now going to be about, right? The alleged cover-up, the lie. Okay, famously, it's not the crime, it's the lie, or it's not the lie, it's the cover-up, right? All right, there's now, in this indictment, we have to look at the fact there's a wealth of evidence of alleged obstruction of justice, okay? Now, the previous version of the indictment was very notable because we learned from Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, right, that in Corcoran's notes and testimony, he described many instances or several instances of Trump not so subtly suggesting that documents might go away without being returned, just saying, yeah, Corcoran had notes on this, and it's in the previous indictment. And he described Trump, all right, saying that, this will go away. Don't worry about it. Okay. Anything really bad, quote unquote, as Corcoran say, should just be removed. We're not going to have to worry about it. Okay. There's that. But that's not all we got here. Okay. And adding De Oliveira to the case, it describes a scene from weeks after the scenes that Corcoran had in his original notes. Okay. Here are the basics according to the indictment. Let's go back. The DOJ on June 24th, 2022 subpoenaed Mar-a-Lago security footage. All right. That day, Walt Nauta changed his plans to go to Mar-a-Lago. Okay. He arrived on the 25th, which was the day after the footage had been subpoenaed. And Nauta and De Oliveira went to a security guard booth that had the surveillance monitors in them. Then they approached the storage room where all the documents had been kept and pointed out the location of the surveillance cameras, right? 2 days later, De Oliveira apparently and allegedly had a conversation with somebody who worked in the IT department, an employee. All right, he took the employee to a room and asked that their conversation be kept confidential. De Oliveira allegedly asked the employee about if you deleted a server with 45 days of security footage on it. Okay, the employee said they didn't know if that was authorized or that they could do that because they're not supposed to do that. Well, De Oliveira allegedly told him, quote unquote, the boss wanted it deleted. Now, the indictment doesn't explicitly and specifically draw a line between this and Trump or even say that he was the boss described, but clearly he was the boss. But the timeline the indictment lays out, which describes the conversations Trump and both men had around this time, suggests that the government is going to intend to prove that it literally was Trump who ordered it. Now, should the government do that, the scenes described would be even more compelling than what we had learned in Trump's attorney's notes, Corcoran's notes. Okay, so imagine that Trump, is ultimately found to have literally deleted the contents of the security footage, right? Now, remember, in the locker up charges and all that MAGA's been saying about crooked Hillary, right? She apparently, in their mind, destroyed evidence about her private email server, right, to try to have the contents hidden, and it seems like actually that's what Trump's he is being accused of, right? The contents of his own server would be deleted after the government had subpoenaed it. And unlike Hillary, who was never accused of actually destroying any relevant evidence, right? Even Comey said at the time, former FBI Director Jim Comey said there was, quote, no evidence that any of the additional work-related emails were intentionally deleted in an effort to conceal them, end quote. Right? The government is here saying that there was an attempt to literally destroy information that it had sought, that it had subpoenaed. Okay? Now, in the initial indictment, the previous version of the indictment, there were two instances in which Trump showed classified information of people who were not authorized to see it. All right. Now, Trump wasn't charged in that for doing so. He suggested that, it's not such a big deal. He said on one document, you may remember, involved Iran, he said it didn't actually exist and that a recording of him talking about it in front of unauthorized people was just bravado. Well, Jack Smith might be saying, really, buddy? Bravado? I'm going to call your bluff, because the superseding indictment, that's the new one, repeats the previous listed 31 counts that allege Trump willfully retained national defense information. Remember, he's being charged under the Espionage Act. But now we have a new count number 32, which is said, quote, a presentation concerning military activity in a foreign country. So I'm not sure this was all bravado or all nothing, as Trump would say, or said. He told that to Bret Baier on Fox News too. Well, okay, now this refers to the previously known allegation that involved a recording of Trump describing and apparently talking about secret information about Iran, which he acknowledged himself hadn't been declassified. All right, now it hasn't been clear the government actually had that document in the initial indictment, but the indictment now suggests that it probably does. It believes it does. The indictment now lists Trump as possessing that document through January 17th, 2022, which might mean that the National Archives recovered it in 15 boxes the following day. I know this is technical, but stick with me. Right? Now, proving Trump had this document would be very, very important in a different way. Okay? It is the document that he actually said in real time he had not declassified. Right? Because remember Trump's competing claims, he has always said, well, I can declassify whatever I want. Well, no, that's not actually true. But this document, he said he actually hadn't declassified, right? Now, proving that he had a document he admitted that was actually classified would actually undermine and destroy Trump's whole attempts to claim he actually declassified the documents. Does that make sense, right? Because he always said, I can declassify anything, but he actually said that he didn't in this instance. Now, Trump has said that. His lawyers conspicuously, to be clear, have not argued that. But that's been one of Trump's things, which he continually runs his mouth about on every news station, every video, all day, on Truth Social, everywhere, says it again and again. Now, the government is no longer just charging Trump with holding on to classified material he's not supposed to and obstructing justice, right? It's now going a different direction. It's going further. It's signaling an intent to prove that his decision to keep these documents was actually going to result in him exposing really sensitive information. Okay. Now, big question is Walt Nauta going to flip? Right? Because the evidence against him appears to be compelling and Trump's the bigger target. But now, right? Think of what Jack Smith did here. He's indicted Walt Nauta and now Carlos De Oliveira, who works at Mar-a-Lago. I think he's the property manager. Now the government has two candidates. They have an maybe even stronger one with De Oliveira about flipping, right? The last count on the superseding indictment, was count number 42, involved alleged false statements by De Oliveira, and they would appear to pretty look like he's going to be seriously fucked up, okay? In a January interview with the FBI, De Oliveira allegedly offered blanket denials that he participated in unloading any of those boxes when they arrived at Mar-a-Lago. Those boxes, by the way, arrived in January 2021 when Trump left the White House. Okay? De Oliveira said he wasn't aware of the boxes, as he put it, quote unquote, never saw nothing. He said he didn't even know where they were stored. Okay. The government is now saying in the indictment, I mean, this literally, the plot can't thicken enough with these people. The government is literally charging that De Oliveira personally observed and helped move Trump and his White House boxes into Mar-a-Lago in January 2020. Okay, this is the least serious of the counts, but it's probably the easiest to prove, right? Because we've now got a tangle. Jack Smith's got two people. He's gone a step further. It's not easy to prove intent, guys. Okay, it's not easy to prove intent. So, but we see here. So we've got willful retention of national security documentation, right? We've got obstruction of justice charges. These are the indictments, and now we've got this idea that Trump, had sensitive information and it did real damage. I mean, why wouldn't it? Imagine any president who's ever served this country sitting around his country club and bragging about an attack plan that he was pondering, even though this was highly classified information that he hadn't declassified. And he's talking to people who should never see this stuff. I did in a previous episode months back about the levels of classification, right? And why when we look at classified documents and people have access to national security secrets, they go into a very secure place called a SCIF, or the way in which you're not allowed to take things. You're not allowed to have cell phones. You're not allowed to have TV cameras. You're not allowed to do any of that stuff. Well, here we are, right? Because you're not allowed, okay, no matter who you are, to just treat classified information like you're writing notes on a Post-it. It just doesn't work that way. So this is big stuff, okay, the superseding indictment. And it's no joke. And it only adds to Trump's troubles. Now, we are still hearing a lot of noise about a potential indictment for January 6th. And we know that there is news out of Georgia that Fannie Willis in Fulton County could conceivably be indicting 12 people. That would be theoretically Trump and 11 others, maybe Lindsey Graham. I don't know. So his legal woes are far from over. He continues, though, to barrel toward the Republican nomination. As I've said on this program many times, it is Donald Trump's party. It is his nomination. In many ways, this podcast was created because of this guy, because of the most manifestly unfit man to ever hold the highest office of our land, who treated the Constitution, the White House, like his plaything, like his mafia headquarters, place to get rich, violate the emoluments clause, and do whatever he saw fit to do, regardless of the foundations of the rule of law and the norms we've held dear and the things we've tried to do as a country, young as though we are, is to be governed by the rule of law and to respect it. And this isn't just being a rogue. This was being an outright criminal. I can't imagine he wouldn't be indicted for inciting an insurrection. We all saw that with our eyes. We covered the January 6 hearings big time. As Cheney said, she will do everything she can to make sure Trump never gets near the White House. So will we, and so will those we fight with on the ground. So as Trump's legal pressures mount, and there's more to come, remember, justice is slow. The wheels of justice do move, and we have to hold everybody accountable. Nobody is above the law. And usually it's people who flout the law the most who say they are, and that would be Donald Trump. And we will not stop fighting against Donald Trump and MAGA and for democracy, because that's what we do here, because it's America or Trump. You can't have both. Folks, thank you for joining me today. Make sure you check me out on TikTok at Dirty Moderate Nation. I'm also on Threads now under at The Real Adam Epstein and Dirty Moderate Nation. But of course, tweeting away and all that stuff. If you're listening to this and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? We're everywhere you get your podcasts. And we have got some amazing guests and new content, exciting things ahead for you. So stick around and thank you for supporting us. We appreciate you. We can't do without you. In the meantime, stay dirty, stay moderate, and stay safe.